Hall, we're ready to begin when you are.
Thank you, Ashley. Good morning, everyone. This meeting of the board is a hybrid physical virtual meeting. I would like to welcome those in the boardroom with me today. While keeping your microphone muted, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I will ask the Secretary to the Board to address a few technical and protocol items.
We have a quorum. The full board is present for this meeting, Chairman Hall and Board Member Smith. Please ensure that you have silenced any mobile devices you have with you. The virtual portion of this hybrid meeting is on Cisco WebEx. We have two OIT staff, Ben Rana and Victor Amaya, monitoring and managing the meeting. They will be locking the meeting and no new connections will be allowed. OIT will be advancing the slides, so you will hear presenters say next slide. If you lose connectivity in this meeting, please contact Victor Amaya. Lastly, this meeting is being recorded. The video recording of the open portion of this meeting will be posted for public viewing for a limited period of time. Chairman Hall, that concludes the technical and protocol items. We're ready to continue when you are.
Thank you, Ashley. The Secretary will now read an opening statement on the Government in the Sunshine Act.
This is an open Farm Credit Administration board meeting under the Government in the Sunshine Act. If anyone raises a subject that may be discussed in closed session as permitted by the Government in the Sunshine Act, Chairman Hall will entertain a motion to close the meeting.
We will now review the published meeting agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as published?
There is. I move to adopt the agenda as published.
And I second the motion. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the matter? If not, the Secretary will record the vote on the motion.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Hall?
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we will consider whether any portions of the meeting should be closed to the public.
Mr. Chairman, the agenda does not include items that we should properly discuss in closed session. I move that the entire meeting remain open.
I second the motion. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, the Secretary will record the vote on this motion.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Hall?
Aye. Motion carries. Please turn to tab 1. The next agenda item is the approval of the minutes as presented behind tab 1.
I move to approve the minutes for the July 10th, 2025 regular board meeting as presented.
I second the motion. Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, the Secretary will record the vote on the motion.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Hall?
Aye. Motion carries. Please turn to tab 2, and I will ask Rebecca Kaiser of ODAE to present the annual report on the Farm Credit System YBS mission performance. This is an information item.
Well, good morning, Chairman Hall, Board Member Smith. It's my pleasure to be here this morning with you to share the updates in the annual report on the Farm Credit System's YBS mission. Next slide. This is our second year of reporting the data in this manner, both from reporting both the non-lending data with the lending data, as well as reporting the lending data in its new modernized format. Both of these give us perspective of dollars spent to support YBS farmers, as well as dollars directly in the hands of these YBS farmers. With this, we saw that the small definition changed January 1st, 2024. It went from $250,000 in annual gross sales to $350,000 in annual gross cash farm income. Major reason for this was to align with USDA's way of reporting. Also, this year, we had major changes in our QA process, major improvements in how we look at the data when it comes in, both for non-lending as well as the lending data, just to make sure that when we get this data in, we are ensuring an accurate representation of the money that is being spent and lent to farmers, YBS farmers. Our QA process improves every year as we work with the system and improve our mutual understanding of the data and gives us a great look at the mission of YBS for the whole system. Next slide, please. To start, I'll give you an overview of the non-lending report. The non-lending report is our online survey that we use. We send out to each institution, provides or goes through different questions in 7 major sections. A couple of those are listed on the screen there. Starts out with non-lending capital commitments. That is the investments and leases that institutions provide to YBS farmers. We also collect financially related services. That's the money or value of money spent on appraisal fees, guarantee fees, tax preparation fees, any of those services that are used to support the YBS farmers in their business planning. We also collect scholarships, grants, money gone to colleges and universities for YBS farmers to attend these universities. Also money spent on conferences, seminars, workshops, as well as the money spent on marketing and outreach, advertising, and seeing how those institutions are bringing in new YBS farmers into their institution. We also collect information on program characteristics, and those are a set of questions at the end of the survey that are just a yes or no on whether they have YBS advisory committees, specific staff training for YBS, their YBS program, whether they have dedicated staff to YBS, if there's a YBS board member, use of interest rate concessions as well is in there. Next slide. And after that, I will, go through some of the results of all of those different areas that I just talked about, the non-lending. 2024, the system provided $348 million in services to YBS producers. 306 million, or about 88% of that, went to investments and leases. 37 million was in the educational and kind of outreach portion, scholarships, grants, educational services, as well as marketing and outreach. And then 6 million was to financially related services. Also, the program characteristics that I talked about, we saw that over half, or about 56%, had an advisory committee. Almost, or over three quarters of all the institutions had dedicated staff dedicated to YBS program, which is nice because those are the folks that I tend to do outreach with when we're doing our QA process, as well as 93, almost all of these institutions had specific program training, helping their staff be aware of what they offer to their YBS borrowers. We also saw that 59% had a YBS board member and 58% used interest rate concessions for YBS farmers. Next slide. So looking at this, if we take out the investments and leases or those non-lending capital commitments, we get a good picture of how the system educates and reaches out to YBS borrowers. With this, there was $43 million total. About 20%, or about $8 million, went to youth organization grants. And that was the largest category of all the different questions that we asked outside of investments and leases. That primarily went to FFA and 4-H in supporting those organizations through the program information surveys, which we highly recommend that institutions submit, that gives us additional information on their YBS programs instead of just telling us the dollars that they spent towards these. It adds a little bit of color into what they do. And from that, I was able to see that, many institutions supported 4-H and FFA programs with these grants. And with that money, they were able to build new greenhouses, buy shop equipment, and also improve local fairgrounds for the kids. We also saw that about $3 million went into scholarships for universities, colleges, and vocational programs. While I include vocational programs in that $3 million, vocational program scholarships actually only totaled about $90,000 across the whole system. So not a very large portion. It was actually the smallest amount that the system spent on through our questions, or at least through the questions that we asked. About 10% of this $43 million, or about $4 million, went to advertising and promotion, trying to reach out to YBS farmers in the territory, in the area, and make them aware of farm credit and what they offer to YBS farmers. We also ask about estate planning, and within estate planning, we kind of bundled up as succession planning and transition planning. And while this is usually aimed more at older farmers and not young, beginning, and small, I think there is some importance there in educating the young, beginning, small farmers of the opportunities that are available, different incentives, different things that they can maybe talk about with, if it's a family member or somebody, if they're, maybe going to take over the farm, just so they're well informed of the different opportunities that are out there for them. This was $432,000 spent on estate planning. Next slide. Now looking at the lending data, just to give an overview, this is the modernized system we implemented 2 years ago, which focused on improving the consistency and the quality of the data. Also focused on easing the reporting burden for institutions. We use the standardized standardized data dictionary so that when we collect this information, the institutions as well as us on both ends, we're speaking the same language. So it creates a more consistent base for the data when we bring it in. We also designed it to be automated. There are higher initial startup costs for institutions implementing the logic on their computer systems, running that code, interpreting the instructions, things like that. But as time goes on, we expect those costs in reporting to go down significantly. We've already seen from the first year, last year, to this year that we got fewer questions. The QA process for the lending data went very smoothly. And I think as we get further and further out from the implementation of this, institutions will really enjoy the ease of just being able to hopefully run some code, maybe adjust some logic if the instructions change, but being able to automate that and give the data to us in an easy way. We also focused on having 8 mutually exclusive groups, 7 YBS groups, and 1 non-YBS group, which provides us with additive lending results across all these 8 groups, which just means that when we look at a table for how the results came in for each group, we can add it up category by category, get a YBS total, as well as getting a system total that is fairly accurate and reliable. Next slide. So now onto the results for the lending data. This is the new loans made in 2024. And this is the subset of total lending activity that is eligible for YBS reporting. You can see down at the bottom the system total for new loans made in 2024. There's about 260,000 loans for about $131 billion. That column volume is in millions. It's also in current commitment, which gives us a good look at the total commitment of dollars into the hands of farmers, the money that has already been lent out, as well as the money that is eligible to be drawn upon. Of that 260,000 loans, 150,000 went to a YBS group, and of the $131 billion, $33 billion went to a YBS group. So the majority of the counts of the loans made in 2024 went to YBS, but the majority of the volume of the loans made in 2024 went to non-YBS. Also, this is aggregated to a system level. With the new way that we collect the data, we're able to break it out by different factors. One of those ways is to look at it by district and be able to see the different areas, strengths and weaknesses maybe of different districts and how they lend. Next slide. So of those 150,000 loans made to YBS groups for $33 billion, this chart shows how that's spread between those 7 groups. We can see at the far right, the small only category is the majority, or the largest section, I should say, for counts and volumes, with 43% roughly of counts and 24% of volume. As you can see, beginning in small is the second closest, close to about 18% for both there. And then towards the middle, young and small is the smallest category we have. Next slide. So now on to the outstanding loans as of December 31st, 2024. Again, this is in current commitment, a total subset or a subset of the total lending activity that is eligible for YBS reporting. There was 1 million, about 60,000 loans on the books as for $401 billion. Of this, 647,000 were coded as YBS, and that was $122 billion. Again, 61% of the counts went to YBS, with about 30% of the volume going to YBS. Similar pattern as we saw with the new loans. Next slide. Again, similar distribution here, just looking at those 647,000 loans. and $122 billion, separated out by YBS Group. The small only category is the largest, followed by beginning and small, and then down to the young and small with the smallest category of lending, at least. Next slide. Now, because we are only in the second year of the way that we present this data, there are some challenges in doing some year-over-year comparisons, but I wanted to give you a little taste of kind of what we're seeing so far. There is the change in the small definition, January 1st, 2024, which only affected originations going forward. Anything that was on the books prior to that is still at the previous small definition. We also improved our QA process from 2023 to 2024. So both of those kind of muddy the waters or cloud any interpretations we may have for comparisons to 2023. That being said, total non-lending dollars decreased by 2.7%. And a lot of this was mostly due to decreases in grants and non-lending capital commitments. There were increases in other categories. They just didn't outweigh those decreases there. We also saw that more institutions reported having YBS advisory committees, board members, all of those things that we collect in the program characteristics. For the lending data, we see that there was an increase in new loan counts made in 2024 compared to 2023. Counts were up 2.6% and volume was up 7.8%. And for outstanding loans, counts were up 0.4% and volume was up 5% from 2023. With this new modernized process of looking at the lending data, especially, we are able to see patterns that we previously couldn't see in the legacy data. One of these is to see that the largest changes in the portfolio composition were the changes in the small only category. And in fact, every category that includes small, that being small only, young and small, beginning and small, and young beginning and small, all four of those saw increases from 2023 to 2024, which is what we would expect for widening the threshold for that small definition. Next slide. So overall, just to emphasize again, more of the counts in the portfolio go to YBS borrowers, whereas more of the volume goes to non-YBS borrowers. And this is same for the new loans made in 2024, as well as with the outstanding loans that are on the books as of December 31st, 2024. The additive structure of the lending data allows us to gain insightful bits of information into how the system is lending and to who they're lending, specific groups. We couldn't tell you before in that legacy process that small only was the largest and that young and small was the smallest. We might have had an idea, but now we have the data to be able to back that up. We're also able to see patterns through the use of participations as well as the change in the small definition that really help us analyze the data in a better way. Both sets of data, the non-lending data and the lending data, are very important for getting comprehensive information on the system's YBS program. This way we can see the money that is spent on supporting YBS farmers, as well as money that is in the hands of the YBS farmers, which gives us good insights into how well the farm credit system is serving its YBS mission. Thank you. I will take any questions. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Board Member Smith.
No questions, just comments, Rebecca, and all good. Number one, congratulations to the work group on dialing down on the accuracy. Come a long ways. And we've always said, as the years go by and having that data and access to that data, we can start to draw lines, trend lines, and see the type of practices the institutions are doing, what has the highest rate of return to that investment, and certainly the significance of YBS. The over half of farm credit loans are to YBS borrowers. Makes sense that it doesn't make up that in volume because they start small. But another observation, at times you wonder about the ROI on significant amount of funds going into the youth programs, primarily in the country 4-H and FFA. But if you think about it, our current Secretary of Agriculture grew up on a small acreage rural farm in rural Texas. And when she was confirmed, her FFA advisor was at her side. So that organization had a profound influence and sparked her interest in agriculture. And now she serves as head of our industry. So what a testament to that ROI on those youth programs. So great presentation. Congratulations to all the work group. Job well done, job continuing.
Thank you.
Rebecca, I'd like to follow up on his first point on sort of now developing trends. What are the plans to sort of build out any models or any trends? Because with the new data, we've changed the things that we're measuring. So is it just plans going forward? Can you backtrack on some of these things and get a better idea of what some of those trends are?
I think our plans going forward are to, every year improve the data. This year is kind of what we're calling our first year, our year zero maybe of the time series. So with that small definition, it's not comparing apples to apples, 23 to 24. So using this year as we go forward, but in some of my own internal research, I've been able to, utilize our own internal data to kind of recreate the data going back years prior to see how it is distributed between those YBS groups. Now, it's nice that we have gotten that information from the system now and maybe a little bit more accurate coming directly from those institutions themselves. But we are able to look back a little bit as well as develop models, looking at trend lines, looking at, like Board Member Smith said, looking at kind of the ROI on the money that's being spent, as well as how that's turning out for lending. So we have a lot of big plans for using this data, and certainly the accuracy of this data going forward is one of the biggest helps for making sure those models are going to be accurate and useful to us.
Oh, that's great. The other question I have, and we talked a lot about just the data. What have you observed within the Farm Credit System itself on communication, sharing best practices? I mean, what are they doing there? In
the past 2 years, it's been interesting to see the communication between the different farm credit institutions, both between FCA and the institutions, as well as service providers that we've talked to help us get more information. And I think it's very collaborative. It's great to see that, great to see institutions cooperate in a cooperative system. So I know that's one of the big things. And we've had great conversations with funding banks, service providers, and the different institutions. And I know they're also talking amongst each other to be able to best come up with ways for accurately recording the data. And so that's all getting shared between all of us. And it's made it definitely more consistent and more reliable data for use.
Well, great presentation, Rebecca, and I know there was a lot of work for other people that went into your presentation, so thank all of you for all of that. If no further questions, thank you for that. And now we'll turn to tab 3. And at this time, I'll ask Sarah Tolman of ORP to present the report on startup costs for new farmers and ranchers, and this will be an information item.
Good morning, Chairman Hall, Board Member Smith. My name is Sarah Tolman, and I'm a senior economist in the Office of Regulatory Policy. And today I'm presenting on the startup costs for new farmers and ranchers. Next slide, please. To start off, a quick intro. The Farm Credit System has a mandate and a mission to serve young, beginning, and small producers. This presentation will focus on beginning or new producers who face additional startup costs, which serves as barriers to entry. Primarily is the sheer scale and scope of these outlays. For example, land or equipment are major purchases, major leases, and plus the cost of an access to credit may be an issue. This presentation is intended to generate some insights to inform future policy discussions. Next slide, please. The slide here is kind of a snapshot to show relationships between young and beginning and small. Quick note, the sizes in terms of sales instead of the gross cash farm income because of data availability from Census of Ag, which only has sales. On our left, we see on average beginning producers are younger on average than established, although not uniformly so. On our right, we see a large concentration of producers are concentrated in very small operations, especially the beginning producers. Next slide, please. The figure here is from an ERS report focusing on beginning farms and farmers. You probably noticed one of its authors is now at FCA, Greg Lyons. So shout out to Greg. The figure is focused on the farm and ranch households, which in the data is typically an operator, I mean, a producer and a spouse, if a spouse exists. We see, comparing beginning and established, we see that total income on average is pretty comparable. However, beginning has considerably less wealth, which has implications in terms of future borrowing or future financial decision-making or possibilities. Next slide, please. This table here breaks out the concentration of beginning, I'm sorry, it's not concentration, it's a distribution of producers across commodities for beginning and established. We see about half of each are concentrated in either cattle or other farms, other crops. I break it out because I wanted to provide context, because as we'll see in a few more slides, expenses are to a fairly large extent a function of commodity specialization. Next slide, please. The margins in agriculture are narrow and even more so for new producers who've got the startup expenses and initial outlays. The measure of the margins used here is net cash farm income. The median in 2023 was slightly negative, and I prefer median because means are skewed upwards by large operations. Next slide, please. The next two slides break out producers here by commodity. Next slide by typology or size. On both slides, the categories with the greatest number of beginning producers are circled. Here, you'll probably notice the categories are not quite the same as the table a couple slides ago. Is because it's different surveys. The tables from the Census of Agriculture, the figure is from a survey called ARMS. But the three circled are pretty comparable to the top two categories in the table. And the takeaway is that margins are narrow. And now it's showing 2023. If it showed the current year, the cattle would be a little better, but the point still stands of the narrow margins with a large for commodities with a large concentration of beginning producers. Next slide, please. The typology is based upon gross cash farm income, which is also what the system's small definition is based upon. So the three circle categories plus retirement farms would all be classified as small according to the system's criteria. The takeaway is the smaller a farm or ranches, the narrower its margins are. Now, granted, the scale, the scale, the x-axis here is much larger than the scale, the x-axis on the previous slide because of the very large farms. However, qualitatively, the point still stands. Next slide, please. The figure here is ERS's. It's from the February farm income forecast, and it breaks out components of production expenses. As I mentioned several slides ago, which expenses are most impacting a given operation is a function of commodity specialization. So for example, for a cattle operation, it's livestock and feed. If it's specialty crop, it's labor, maybe seed, fertilizer, pesticides. However, some expenses not included are the major startup expenses I'll be covering in the next coming slides of land and buildings and equipment. So next slide, please. This slide provides a landscape, no pun intended, of land acreage and ownership. On our left, we see the concentration of small acre, the concentration of producers in small acreage operations is pretty sizable, especially for beginning producers. On our right, we see most producers are concentrated on land that is fully owned. A little more for beginning producers. Next slide. The cost of land is a major startup expense, whether it's rented or bought. Here shows the values on a national basis between 2014 and 2024. And we see it's increasing, and especially starting in 2021, it starts increasing more steeply, which makes it more expensive to start out. And renting is an option as well many times, and rent is getting more expensive, although not quite as much. Next slide, please. Of course, equipment is very expensive, and new producers are faced with acquiring it all up front, as well as acquiring the feed or the seed or the fertilizer all at once. So leasing can be an option to make it more manageable up front, or purchasing and financing it. However, I'll speak more about next slide. Accessing credit may be more challenging for beginning producers on average. Next slide. And this is the case because on average, at least, beginning producers are riskier prospects in terms of the lower net worth and collateral, working capital, and a shorter business history. Of course, many obtain credit. In fact, a larger percentage of beginning producers have debt relative to established. And those with debt are on average more highly leveraged. Next slide, please. Now, in addition to land and equipment becoming more expensive, it's more expensive to borrow to purchase it. The figure here shows how starting in 2022, rates shot up. So in addition, beginning producers on average are facing higher rates because of being a riskier lending proposition. Next slide, please. Final cost I want to cover is regulatory compliance cost, which varies considerably across states, commodities, farm or ranch size. A couple of researchers at Cal Poly have studied specialty crop producers in the Central Valley of California. And while I caution against extrapolating to the different states or different commodities, I found it a useful example of how regulatory costs have increased much more quickly than total costs. So it's something to keep on our radar. Next slide, please. And finally, resources exist for new producers, as Rebecca spoke about. The Farm Credit System has a variety of programs. One outside the scope of her presentation was partnerships with third parties. So, for example, many associations are part of FSA's preferred lender program, which streamlines applications for both the borrower and lender. FSA, of course, has got a variety of loan programs, and in each of them, a portion of the funding is set aside for beginning producers. And finally, extension or state extension programs have got a variety of educational and planning resources, including farm and link programs, which facilitate matching up producers interested in exiting agriculture and producers interested in entering agriculture. Next slide, please. I'm wrapping up. Starting out in agriculture involves large initial outlays, which further narrows agriculture's already narrow margin. Land is increasingly expensive, and this increases the barrier to entry. High rates have have increased the cost of borrowing, and new producers may face additional challenges in obtaining credit. Resources exist for new farmers from the system, as well as federal and state governments. And finally, this presentation was intended to generate some insights to inform future policy discussions. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Questions or comments, Board Member Smith?
Thank you, Sarah, for a very comprehensive look at YBS borrowers. Turn to slide 25.
Which slide is that?
25.
I'm sorry, I've got to print out yours, so I don't.
That's okay.
Okay.
You don't have to. Oh, there.
Oh,
it is.
okay.
Very good.
Great, thank you.
I know back in the 80s, what got a lot of farm operations in trouble was bringing young people back in the operation and looking to that farm to support additional families, sometimes multiple children bringing back in the operation. It's reassuring to see this slide, and I look at the percentage of the total farm income that's off-farm income is very significant in that time frame, 2013 through 2017, and it's almost total income is almost on an equal keel with established farmers. That surprised me. Any conclusions, Sarah? Speculation? I'm glad to see it. I mean, when my wife and I started out I think we were just barely above the poverty line. In fact, I think we were at the poverty line. But you know, looking at this, it looks like we maybe have a more educated, affluent young farmers that's moving into agriculture. Have you thought about that?
I've thought about it. It's tough to tell because I don't have data access.
Mhm.
But my initial thoughts agree with you on maybe more educated or in terms of salary, higher salary at least, or a greater probability of being employed off the farm. So that raises off farm income. It's tough to know based on aggregates, but something to think about also. So I was thinking about it yesterday. It's too late to change my slides and it's not my analysis, but I'd be interested in seeing medians to see if it's a similar finding, because it's possible some very high earning data points are skewing it, or maybe it's not.
Maybe it even shows more of a movement in rural America.
Or that, yeah.
People that are educated but enjoy the rural lifestyle. You know, particularly you look at one single item out of the household budget is insurance. And I talked to a young family here this last month and was asked about their insurance bill, close to $30,000 for a family of, in that case, they had 4 children. So, but you think about that, and on top of taxes and food and everything else, that budget
That's a lot.
would be pretty tight. But you know, if there's one thing, the outreach to YBS programs is the importance of those farm income and the importance of a vibrant rural community to be able to support those jobs. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Sir, I don't have any questions, but I appreciate you adding that one slide on regulatory costs. It's something we don't always think about as barriers to entry for younger producers. And really the variability across the country. In some states, it'd be more difficult to for young farmers. And institutions probably have to work a little bit harder to encourage young farmers to get into the business. So I'm glad you pulled that out in particular. But thank you very much. And thank you for your presentation. If there are no further questions, I'm going to ask everyone to turn to the adjournment tab, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second the motion. The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, the secretary will record the vote on this motion.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Hall?
Aye. Motion carries, and the meeting is adjourned.